What is up? Welcome to Lead with Soul, the podcast for women leaders who are done. We are so done with overcomplicating success, overcomplicating leadership. And today I am talking to an old friend, although she's not really old, but we've known each other for ages. Dr. Anissa Broussard. She is also a dentist, but today's conversation has nothing to do with dentistry. It is so good to see you. I don't know how many years later.
I am so happy to be here. As I shared earlier, this is like the most important thing that I can do probably this week or this month is to be here with you. So I'm just so grateful for the invite.
Oh my gosh. So I know I've been itching to chat with you. I, I know you have transitioned away from dentistry into a more mentor, leader kind of role. And I know it is mainly with dentists, but talk to me a little bit about it for those that don't know you or those that are not dentists in this space. Share with us who you are, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a dentist, right? And that's part of who I am. But what's really interesting is my journey has taken me so many different paths in dentistry and in the industry. And so it started off, as you know, teaching marketing, teaching Facebook marketing, right? And I didn't even know I was going to do that. It just kind of happened where a dentist in California kept saying, "Can you teach me what you're doing in your office?" And so I went down that journey, and interestingly, doctors started to ask me, "Can you help me with other things?" And so that led to coaching. And I'll be very vulnerable here and honest, which is really interesting. So at that time, as I started coaching, I started to hear a lot of noise, right? And the noise that I was hearing, first of all, was like, you're the marketing girl, right? Like you're the marketing girl. And I'm like, well, I know more than marketing, right? And so that was just one aspect of my practice. And it's so interesting because where I'm at right now has come full circle. And I'm actually now running a marketing agency. But it's interesting how we get into listening to the noise of other people and feeling like we and it's imposter syndrome, but I think it's actually deeper than that. I think it comes more of like shame and like what are people going to think about us. And so it's interesting, like I remember, and if it's okay, I know we're going to go deep, we're not talking about dentistry, right?
No fluff today.
Right,
We're
right,
bearing it all.
right. And so it's so interesting because I started to hear this noise. And the truth, it is what it is. It came from a lot of men in the industry, right? And it wasn't a lot of people, it was just a couple people, but it sounded really, really loud. And so it took me back to that moment in childhood. And I've done a lot of work since, right? Where a memory came up where I was embarrassed and I was ashamed inside of my friend group, right? And if we can take it back and be even vulnerable, like I wound up doing a lot of work, plant medicine, ayahuasca. And in those ceremonies, I went back and I haven't really shared this in the industry, but I hope it's okay I think it's okay to share here. But I went back and it took me to a moment when I was like 14 and I was actually date raped, right? Now, my clients know about this because I talk to them about it now, and it's really beautiful because it helps them heal. But at that moment, I completely forgot, right? Because I wasn't the type that would like tell people. I didn't want people's like empathy or sympathy. And so I just kind of like just said, well, it was just something that happened, right? Until, until interestingly, a powerful man in our industry reached out to me and he was like, Anissa, you're playing it really small. You're really smart. He was like, but like you're playing it really small, and that's because you care about what people think about you. And so it's interesting because I went into that and I realized that I was.
Yeah, yeah. And unfortunately, that is the story of so many women. It doesn't matter what industry they're in. All of these women that I interact with, connect with, work with, and this is, like I said, unfortunately, the recurring theme. Um, I also think it comes from as women growing up, we are consciously, subconsciously taught to play small, taught to hold it in, be respectful, be kind. And oh my gosh, worse if you're the oldest daughter, right? And I think in some way, shape, or form, it carries over. And gosh, that imposter syndrome, so real, so real. So, what was that defining moment for you? I know you said it was an industry, another colleague, right, that reached out to you, but was that your defining moment, or had you started questioning yourself? Let's go deeper into that.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because, that led me, or while I was in that journey or that discovery, I was doing business coaching, and it was really, really powerful, right? Like being able to connect and help people with leadership and growing their companies and understanding how to get more profit margins and training for teams. And I still have, some clients that I'm working with now. But what started to happen is I started to discover that oftentimes what people saw was the issue, which was like, I need training, I need to have systems. It actually was deeper,
Mhm.
right? It was actually deeper things that started to kind of come up for people. And a lot of it was around the frequencies of, again, worrying what people think about you, or one of the lowest frequency, which is fear, right?
Yeah.
And so, fear of letting that team member go, fear of worrying about what people think about you, fear of abandonment, right? And that abandonment of like, what if this team member leaves me, is because maybe, as a child you felt abandoned because your dad worked and did not come to your gymnastics meet, and so you felt abandoned. And so it's so interesting that, we go on this journey, and as women, oftentimes we sometimes to wind up stepping into our masculine, right? And that's a whole nother thing, right? And I look at myself, I look at you, I look at, several others that I've spoken to recently, Sonia, Chopra, who's a freaking powerful,
She's a powerhouse, yes.
powerhouse, right? I'll say that, right? And a lot of us, early on, were really hitting hard. And I question for myself, I'll just speak for myself, was it because we had to fight? Was it because we knew that we wanted to have something really good for ourselves, but maybe we didn't have it provided for us, so we had to step into that masculine, right? Although realizing that the true power comes in really being playful and stepping into the beautiful goddess and queen that we are.
Absolutely.
And when we step into that goddess queen, what we realize is that life can become very easy. And we can realize that if we start to operate out of love, right? So love for, I know I've got, some coaching clients and some marketing clients in my agency that work with you, right? And they, a couple of them were recently talking to me, and they're like, I'll text her. And anytime I text her, she's texting me, right? I mean, they were just talking, they felt love, right? They felt love. And so when we start to operate our life, and, let's take it to business, and our business out of how can we love people more?
Right.
How can we just love them more? Like, forget about the money, forget about everything, just love them. Because the truth is, that's the highest frequency, and that's what everybody desires is love. And so, if we can just care about people, and we can stop worrying about what people think about us, and we can just go all in, all of a sudden something very beautiful and magical happens, which was part of kind of like what happened in my dental practice, right? Like, I was loving on my team. I mean, it's so interesting. Big announcement today. Today was a major day for me in my life, actually. I decided, I've been thinking about it, and I decided today to actually sell my practice.
Well, congratulations. Well,
Yeah.
you sound excited, so I'm going to offer the
Yeah.
congratulations.
And I'm very excited because, it's been 4 years since I've moved to Florida, and the lady, my partner, and has really been there. And so it's beautiful for me to say, you know what, like, you deserve this, and we're gonna work it out. However we work it out, the price is gonna be worked out, everything's gonna work out because I love you. right? And so it's just beautiful. So yeah, again, I'm just, I'm really, really happy to be here. Things have evolved. I haven't even shared with you, but I decided 2 years ago, dentists were asking me to help them with marketing. And so I started my agency, and it's so crazy because going full circle. And at this point now, I've become ineffable. Like I'm like, I don't give a, what, because I know that I'm operating out of love, and it's really, really beautiful.
That is amazing to hear. And, I agree with you. All of this comes down to, and no offense to the men in our lives, right? I mean, we have some amazing role models, be it spouses, mentors, or friends, or whoever we surround ourselves with. But women just lead differently. And I think it comes from, I don't know about you, but for the longest time, I was ashamed of being emotional as a leader, of showing, love or crying and not in a, oh, unhealthy way, but tears of joy kind of thing with my team, with my patients, when you were taught to man up, like, you got to be strong. And the moment I decided, whatever, like I am who I am, take me for what I am. And things just, it's like the water just flows down its natural path. So I agree with you 100% that when you come from a place of love, magic just unfolds, right?
Absolutely. And it's beautiful when we start to really understand, guys. Like it's so interesting. And I'll share another personal story. So, I'm very I will say I'm very proud, right? Like I've been able to do really great things for my kids and all of the things, but it was very interesting because around 6 months ago, I had a friend, male friend, that bought me a really nice piece of jewelry, very nice piece of jewelry, right? And I was a little bit confused and overwhelmed. And I felt like, why? Right. And it started to really kind of question, do I have money wounds? Do I have money wounds? Right. And so all of a sudden, I actually go to Rhythmia. I'm in the medicine in ayahuasca, and I ask, right? And so how that medicine works is it allows you to go and to ask your brain, which has blocked memories. It says, I want to see it, and it shows you the memory. So it's medicine, plant medicine. And so it showed me when I was a child, and my dad told me about this family, and they were really good to my family. And so he shared that this business owner, this restaurant owner, where my grandpa worked, he had a third grade education, was a cook, taught him how to invest in buying property. So when my grandfather passed away, he left like 12 homes to my grandma, right? And so he was saying, like, this family was so good to our family. His daughter gave us clothes for you when you were a little girl. But the first thing he said, and interestingly, I talked to my dad about this last week, is he said, there was this Jewish guy who owned a restaurant, right? And so all I heard was, and then he says, the Jewish people, they have so much money, right? And so for me, my dad totally did not tell me, it was a beautiful story about this family, but I heard the Jewish people or people that look like me are wealthy. Okay. What my dad also told me is that if you go to dental school or medical school, right, you get an education, then you'll live a good life. Now, is it true that I live a good life? I would say so. Like I have a nice home, I have a nice car, I'm paying for my kids to go to college, but I wouldn't say that I'm wealthy, right? Like my money makes money, right? And so it's so interesting the stories that sometimes, most times, many times are not true, or how we've heard them, right? And so I went in and I realized actually all I have to do is just decide how much I want, have to reverse engineer how much I need to put away every month. And then I just need to have a strategy of, and then I started sharing this with like some of the doctors. I'm like, what's your number? It's like 4 more Invisalign cases or like 3 sleep appliances, which is why now I'm sending everybody to you. I'm like, it's like three sleep appliances. If you put it aside, you're gonna be wealthy. Like your money, like you'll have $380,000 coming to you for the rest of your life if you do that for 10 years, right? And so, like, that's why, if you just transparently, that's why I've been sending everybody. I'm like, then you need to go talk to Meghna because I
Yeah.
need you to get your number. Because to me, I'm committed to them being wealthy, right? Because the truth is, and I saw this as well, is that queens, we are queens, we deserve to live in a palace, a castle. We deserve to have jewels, right? We are the creator of all things. We can have whatever we want to have, right? And so it's those stories of you can't sit down, be quiet, girls can't do this, right? Where we have put ourselves in a situation where we're operating out of fears, scarcity or fear, right? And blaming, oh, it's the insurance company's fault and like everybody else's fault, but just stepping into our power. And so, yeah, it's just been a really beautiful, beautiful journey. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I believe that. And just I was thinking about as we were talking about, you were making your point earlier, gender stereotypes is something that is ingrained so deeply, and we don't realize how it impacts our life going forward. We were touring colleges for my youngest this weekend, and at the airport, there was a family. They had a little boy and a little girl. The girl had her stroller with her doll in it. And the brother wanted to push the stroller with the baby. It was a doll, the baby in it. And, I immediately saw the family, the extended family. It's like, oh, girls are supposed to push the stroller. It's your, and I started thinking about it. I'm like, you're teaching a child, a boy, a male child that has the capacity to have empathy and love and caring. We're taking that away from that child. We're
That's
training
trauma.
him to be tough. But then what do we do when our daughters marry a man that will not assist with the children at home? We're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. My husband won't do this, or my son-in-law, or my son, or whatever the relationship is. Well, it begins way back when we taught those boys all they need is cars or football, and nothing wrong with those, but let them gravitate towards caring, right?
It happens with both of us. Like this is obviously a woman's podcast, but like men are broken, like men don't, boys don't cry, and then all of a sudden, I know so many men that, friends of mine that, will have conversations and are like, I feel safe, right? I'm like, cry, like you're human, like, and they're like, and I'm like, oh, your daddy told you that story, or your mama told you that story, that boys don't cry, right? I'm like, that was a lie.
So much so. Yes, yes, for sure. Let me ask you, what is a challenge that you faced, which at that time actually felt like you were failing at something or that it was a failure, but actually turned into a blessing when it comes to this path and this journey?
Yeah. I will tell you, I have failed so many times, right?
Haven't we all? Amen.
Uh, and they're so it's so beautiful because the truth is that what I've come to discover is that every step is required.
Mhm.
Every step is required for us to get to our purpose, right? And so when we try ideas and they fail, and then we get feedback, okay, and we do it again, and we do it again, and we do it again, and we get resiliency. Or, I'll share, this is like it really interesting. So 2 years ago, I started two new companies, right? One was Dental Flicks, which is like dental string education, and I started my agency, Digital Floss. Now, when I started the agency, and I've shared this with my doctors, and it's a really beautiful story. All of a sudden, I really believed that that one of my coaches on my team, who's been with me for 10 years, I believe in her, and I believe that she could step in and she could do coaching calls, right? Because I would do like quarterly. Now I'm doing like, now I do one-on-ones, but like I was doing quarterly one-on-ones, right? Now I'm doing monthly for them. But like I realized that when I stepped out, I said, well, she can do it. I believed in her. But the truth is that a lot of the doctors, they wanted me. And so we winded up going from like 80 coaching clients in a very short time to like 40. Okay, like literally half, right? And when I was in the moment, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what is going on?" Right? And then I said, "Anissa, stop. Okay? Stop having to try to have control. Just surrender and like know that this is happening for you." Okay? So that's part of it, is understanding that you don't know why it's happening, but it's happening for me. Now, what I started to realize is that by going small, I can actually love them more. Okay? And so what I realized is something that I couldn't do then that I could now do after is I can now do one-on-one calls. So I started doing one-on-one calls with my doctors every single month. Okay. Then I started to have more opportunities for them and their team members, their managers, even to come and have masterminds in my home. Okay. And it gave me the capacity now to do what my true purpose is as we're moving forward, which is to run my marketing agency. And the marketing agency, we're flying out, we're getting content, we're doing AI, SEO, like all of this stuff. And really what we're doing is we're helping people get seen as their authentic selves so that people who need to heal can find them to heal. And this, what I've realized is my true, as I'm going into my, this next season in dentistry, is actually my calling, my purpose is to help people get seen as their authentic selves. And so what winded up happening is I now had the capacity and have the capacity to actually run my marketing agency. And so I have put a CEO into DentalFlix, and I am no longer taking coaching clients at all. Unless maybe they're coming in through the marketing agency, maybe, right? But this agency and then what happened, this is crazy what started to happen. This is the universe, this is God, okay? All of a sudden, I start getting marketing agencies saying, we want to send our clients and like partner with you. I have an amazing video shooter. He's like telling me about these two other guys who he thinks he's like, they're better than me. He goes, I know I'm good, humble, but these guys are really, and then they're reaching out. They're like, I want to come work and shoot for you full time. And then my copywriter's like, I want to come write for you along with my student I'm like, what is going on? Right. And so it's just, everything is beautiful. Everything is perfect. Right. Like that's what I want you to understand, guys. It's like, everything is perfect. We just have to keep going. And we have to understand, right, that we have a purpose and we have to keep seeking to just, again, understand, why do we have fears? Why do we have resistance? Why do we care about, because if we're going to live our true purpose, this is what I've learned as well, Meghna, and I've seen this in you. I've been watching you quietly, girl, right? Is that you get to the point where you don't give a crap about what people think about you. I saw your post and you're like, I'm turning gray, right? And you're like, it is what it is. Like I came from yoga because that's important to me, right?
Exactly.
And I didn't have time to do my hair. So guess what? This is what you're getting. You're getting today, right? And it's okay. It's all perfect, right? Because as my yoga instructor said an hour ago, he goes, people don't love you for how you look. They love you for how you make them feel. Right. And so,
Oh,
like,
yeah, that's true.
hopefully this podcast is like touching you in a way that, like, it's important, guys. Like, your purpose matters. And, like, we've got to stop worrying about what people think. We have to stop worrying about failing, because through the failure is where we actually get the insight and we start to understand where we need to go next.
Yep, that's the stepping stones to
Yeah.
what success is for us, not what it looks like to you or to the person next to me. It's my unique path. How do you define leadership? And how has your perspective evolved over just over the years that I have known you? How do you
Yeah.
think it has evolved?
Honestly, I think, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but this is truly what I feel is like the best leaders, they create other leaders,
Mhm.
right? Like in my dental practice, my manager, she runs the office. Like I haven't, and it's not here. I'm in Florida, it's not here. I haven't stepped in that practice in like a year and a half. I don't know anything about toilet paper. I don't know if something goes wrong. I've got team members there that I don't even know because she's done the hiring, right? And so I trust her. Keisha, who is my partner, she's got a small amount. She's like, I'm called her today. I'm like, I think it's time, girl, right? Like she's been built as a leader, right? People on my team, of my internal team, the same thing with the doctors, right? Like for me, helping them to become leaders. And I tell them, like, you are not meant to be with me forever. Like, I am going to be your guide, just like when I hired my trainer for my toy poodle. Like, she came into my life, she trained. And then I said, you know what? I want to have one more session. I want you to watch me and make sure I have what you taught me so that I can do it right, that I'm doing it right. That's leadership, right? Not doing things for people, but really empowering them and saying, I know you can do it. This is what you need to like. I support you. What do you need? Do you need training? Do you need, equipment? What do you need to do your job? Right? And let them do it. Right? And so then we as women, which is really beautiful, or men, right? Then we as humans can step into, interestingly, like showing up in a much better way. Because like even in my agency, I'll just say that because that's the season of where I'm in right now. We're growing so fast. And there's no way that I could do the shooting and the editing and the copywriting and the ads and build a fund, like, right? And so I've got to build leaders. And so even with that, we hired like video editors. We found one who was like phenomenal. And we're like literally within like a couple months, we're like, can we elevate you, right? To become the leader of all of the video editors. And we're going to pay you more money, right? To just train them on why you're so great. And this person doesn't feel like their job is in jeopardy because they're actually being paid to be a leader. And so now the other video editors can now elevate and rise up. And as we continue to grow, we'll have other pod leaders that are overseeing people. And so and we told them, like, keep getting better because there's going to keep being opportunities for pod leaders. Same thing with our social media managers. And now what happened was we're like, we want you to do the hiring because we want somebody like you. So you already know what we want. So you go and do the hiring and bring in the other people and then send me a Zoom so I can look at it and just approve it. Right. And then my video editor is like, do you want to meet with them ahead of time? I'm like, no, I trust you. Right. And they're like, wow, nobody's ever said that to me before. Right. I think that's just like a story because I'm a storyteller just like you are. But I think that's an example of leadership, right? Of like just bringing other people in and believing in them, giving them the tools and letting them lead, right? And that gives us freedom, right? Then we get to go to yoga.
And it allows us to tap into our creative side even more because
Yeah.
when you get out of the weeds and you elevate other leaders, it allows you to be more of a creative. And I see
Absolutely.
this more so in high achieving women because we're so used to doing everything that it's almost scary to give away control. And it's so funny. I was speaking to another a client, and that's what she said. She's like, "I feel like I'm not going to matter anymore." I'm like, "That is the goal. We do not want you to matter. We want you to build the ecosystem that is self-sustainable." So, yes, I love that you shared that. You are a high achieving woman and you work with other high achieving women as a coach, as a guide, as a mentor. What are some of the most common mindset blocks that you notice, either in yourself that you have worked through or even in the high achievers that you work with?
Yeah, let's go back exactly to where you were just now. It's definitely because we're so driven, because we had to do things on our own, right? And we became successful because of that. Okay. So that's like, let's not take that away. We became successful because we were driven and we were willing to do the work. Okay. But what winds up happening is that if we stay stuck in that mode, we're going to stay flat and we're going to burn out because we're going to want to achieve more, but we can't work any harder to get that, right? And so you start to see I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out. I don't have any time for myself. I haven't taken a vacation. I see you going to yoga. I wish I could go to yoga, right? Like all of those things. I haven't taken a vacation in 2 years. And so it has, and look, ask me how I know. Right? Ask me how I know. And so one of the things that we share, and I know you've heard this concept, is you got to delegate and elevate, right? You've got to bring other people in. And you have to say, what is it that I like to do and what am I really good at? Right. And so for dentistry, for those dentists that are listening, it's like, for some of them, for me in my practice, it was like, I like to do the marketing, right? So I did the marketing, I was on social media, like, and I like to do, for me, it was like high-end cosmetic dentistry, implant restorations, complex, like that's it, right? And so it was like bringing in the manager, like, so I really believe that mindset of thinking you have to do it by, like I tell doctors, listen, guys, I want you to feel like you do. I said, I don't do anything in my office, and I want you to think the same. Like my manager does this, my assistant does this, and you literally are like a paintbrush, just like you said, the creator. So you have space and you can give the idea of what you want, and then other people are executing it, right? And it's like one of the little phrases I tell them, like, docs, you got people for that, right? Like you got people for that, right? And I'm like, who's your people? Your manager. And then I go to the managers. I'm like, guess what, managers? Stop doing everything. Why? Because you got people for that, right? And then the team members, right? Because we do training, or it could be like, anybody's training, right? Like you're somebody's people, right? So it's like, oh, okay, what about the teams? You want people? Cool. We got people for you too, right? And that could be like an insurance coach or a scheduling coach or a clinical coach, right? Like you're a clinical coach. There's always people for that, right? So stop trying to do everything yourself.
Yes, we got to delegate and elevate so
Yeah.
we can step into our zone of genius. This is what I'm constantly telling my team. It's like, whatever you are not the best at, let whoever's better than you take care of it so you can actually thrive. What is the best advice you have received that has changed how you have shown up as a leader?
The best advice. Yeah. Um, I think this goes back really to a beautiful story of childhood. And it came from my dad. So, right out of college, he worked at Popeye's Chicken. He was a manager at Popeye's Chicken. And so, as he walked in, the employees, I mean, there was a lot of tension. They were literally like, he walked in the back, they're throwing chicken at each other with flour on. The orders are wrong, right? It was the least profitable location in all of New Orleans, which is where I grew up. And so he came in, he looked for a couple of weeks, and he just kind of observed. Okay. And so all of a sudden he goes in and he says, I realize, guys, you're stealing, there's chicken. You know, they were stealing the chicken. He goes, you don't have to do that. I see. He said, at the end of the day, he says, listen, I got a little baby at home. She's 1 year old. That was me. And he said, at the end of the day, if there's any leftover chicken, let me know. He said, but take it home for your family. He said, what we're going to do is anytime you send out an order, you're going to initial the receipt. And if the order is wrong, you're going to pay for it. And then he actually put in whiteboards. I teach whiteboards, but he put in a whiteboard and he said, we're going to tick every time we do a cherry pie and a large fry. And at the end of the month, if we hit the goal, he said, I'm going to take, 5 or 10, this was like 50 years ago, $5 or $10 out, and I'll give it to you out of my own pay. And so what winded up happening is a year later, they became the most profitable location in all of New Orleans. Al Copeland hired my dad, or brought my dad in to Popeye's University to train all of the managers. And so what my dad told me, which was the biggest lesson, and I mean, I've spent a lot of money on coaches and books and podcasts and mentors, but the greatest lesson I ever learned was from my dad. And he said, when you take care of people, they'll take care of you. And so he would say that. I remember when I started my dental practice, he said, my baby, when you take care of people, they'll take care of you. When you take care of people, they'll take care of you. And I think, and again, that's just going back to love, because so many people, and I tell this to my doctors, I share this with my teams, they never, so many either have a mama or a dad, right? That didn't tell them they loved them, right? Didn't believe in them. And so many of our doctors, so many of our teams, people, humans have never had anybody to believe in them. And if you can go and say, you know what, I believe in you. I'm gonna invest in your training. I'm gonna put you, in your case with Meghna, I'm gonna do like I'm gonna invest in you because I believe in you. You may not know how to do it yet, but that's okay. I see something in you. That team member is going to stick by you. Like one of the mottos of my agency with all of us actually came from Chris, and he was working at CBS, and he started doing videos for me part time to do videos for me for talking about dental practice management, right? And I saw him, and I was like, "You're working like 12-hour days," and he had a young son, and I said, "A year from now, I want to be able to retire you from from CBS." And all of a sudden, the agency evolved, and so now like he goes a couple times a week, but the other days he's at home. And our motto that he came up with is Anissa, we're all we got. We are all we got, and all we've got is us. And so we say that's our huddle when we get onto our level 10s every week. We're all we got, and all we got is us, right? So I think that's leadership, it's culture, it's love, right? And when we lead with that and we take care of our teams, we take care of our patients with love, like there's never going to be a need for lack because how many people out there can we help, right? Like if you wanted to, Magna, if you wanted to, if you had the capacity, how many dentists could you help? Right? How many are you helping with what you're doing right now with this podcast, which is so separate from how you're helping with the sleep apnea training? So, yeah, and how many people could you help there? There's an infinite number of dentists that need your help? How many people, patients? I tell doctors, they're telling me, I'm like, how many sleep apnea cases are on your whiteboard? They say four. I'm like, four? Four. I said, let me ask you a question. Maybe you can answer this question because I don't know I said, I don't know the answer. Go ask Meghna. I said, what percentage of your patients, what percentage of the population could use a sleep appliance? What's the number? I have no idea. Right? I'm like, is it 40%? Is it 40? Let's just say it's 40%. Look at how many people came in last month in your office, walked in. Okay. All right. So, how many people need help? An infinite number. An infinite number. Right. And so, if there's an infinite number, will the money ever run out? No. So, why are you operating in fear and lack? Right. I can't go pay for the course. I can't pay for the training. It's why I'm so passionate about the marketing now because I'm like, all you need now is for people to know that you're there. You know what I mean? So,
And the
it's,
money, the fear around money is just a symptom, isn't it? It's
yeah.
not really, it's not the true problem, for lack of a better word. It's not what we're truly dealing with. It's a symptom of everything that we've been trying to dive into in the past, whatever minutes that we've been chatting. But yes. Um, do you have a morning routine
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
want to share?
Yeah. So I typically wake up. I have uh mud water. This is like a
Yep.
coffee substitute with turmeric and cacao and all of this stuff.
Yes.
And then I go to yoga.
Mhm.
Typically, I didn't get there this morning, which is why I went tonight. I had a red-eye flight, so I went tonight. And then I live near the beach, and so I go and even if I'm walking for 10 minutes, I'll go and put my feet on the sand and ground. Sometimes instead I'll do meditation. That's really important to me. And I typically start my calls if I'm doing calls at like 9 or even 10. Why? Because that's what I want to do. Right. Like even in my own practice, we would work till 4 o'clock every day because I'm like, we have mamas that needs to get home and do homework and cook dinner. Like it is what it is. We're going to close at 1 o'clock on Friday, right? Because it's my business. I can do whatever I want. And so if you want to work and start at 10, then work and start at 10. And if you feel like the office needs to work earlier, then hire another doctor, right, who's in a different season of their life. Because I was there, then I would work early, right? Like just figure it out, right? And don't say, oh, well, other people can have it. I wish I, no, you are the creator of your life, right? And so that's my
You're
morning
the creator of your life.
bar.
That right there. Yes. So, seeing how the name of our show is Lead with Soul, what does leading with soul mean to you?
Yeah. So leading with soul to me means that we're leading as our authentic self. Like our soul is our consciousness, right? Like, and so as we start to step into our consciousness and who we really are and remember who we are, then we start to remember that we are a queen. We start to remember that we are the creator of all things, right? we start to step into that. We start to understand that the stories of why we fear things are not true and caring what people think about us are not true. And we let all of that go. We stop to look at the roses and smell them and let go of, people around us, even that are operating in those frequencies, team members, right? And I will say this too. Sometimes people are like, I keep having a team member leave, 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 leave. And sometimes the team members are actually leading with soul, right? And they're looking for a doctor that's going to be operating in love instead of fear. And so when we start to step into that, we start to attract team members that are also wanting that peace and love and happiness and somebody to believe in them and joy,
Your
right?
vibe attracts your tribe.
That's where the magic happens, right?
Amen to that. So if you could go back to 22-year-old Anissa, what
Yeah.
would you teach her about leadership and the journey that is to come?
I would just tell her, and I wouldn't change anything about my life. I wouldn't change anything. I've had beautiful moments, I've had painful moments with my family, right? Painful moments with my kids, painful moments in this industry, like attacks. Like I've experienced a lot. But they've all shaped who I have become. And I have realized that because of it, I've gotten insight, I've gotten better, I've humbled myself. And I would say that again, like everything happens how it's supposed to happen. All of the lessons were there to teach us something because we stay in these loops, right? These loops until the mirror is looking at us and we stay in the loop of some lesson of care what people think about us, care what people think about us until we don't. And then we exit the loop and we're never there again. Right. And so these things come into our lives to teach us a lesson. Right. And so it's going to stay there until we elevate out of it and we raise our consciousness, which is all again with stepping into leading with your soul.
Yeah, wise words indeed. If somebody's listening, that's listening in today or our episode, is a woman who is feeling stuck, who is feeling uninspired with everything that may be going on in life, what action would you encourage them to take? Just one little.
Yeah. Honestly, I would say reach out and talk to somebody else. Like it's been so beautiful. Today I had a lady, I was at a retreat last week and we had a conversation for like an hour and she was stuck in some things in her business and I was like, encouraging her and she reached out yesterday. She's like, "Thank you so much for the encouragement." I'm like, "Whatever you need, like reach out to me. Like we can jump on a call. I'm here for you." Right? And the same thing, like there was a lady that helped me with some insight the other day and I reached out to her yesterday and I'm like, "Thank you so much because what you did was so great." So, like we have to also here's another thing as women, oftentimes I realized about myself, I had a hard time asking for help. Okay? I could pay for help. Okay. That's control. I can pay my team. I can pay my manager. I can pay, right? I can pay a coach. I can pay, right? Like whatever I want, I can pay for it. Okay. Until how the universe works out, I was in a situation where I needed help and some ladies came and they helped me. And it was so beautiful, right? And so that was there to teach me the lesson. Don't be afraid. Like, what's the worst that happens? Somebody's going to say, I don't have the time, right? And so that's why, Meghna, when people are reaching out to you, you're there to help them, right? I would say reach out to me. Like, I'm not even taking coaching clients, right? So, like, you can't pay me for anything, right? Like, I mean, reach out. Like if you feel like there's something that I've said that's kind of like got you curious about consciousness or like those things, reach out or send you some podcasts to listen to or whatever, right? I know I sent you a podcast, Magda, right? Like just reach out because as sisters, like we got to look after each other. We gotta encourage each other, right? And just like the plants need us, right? And we need the plants for oxygen and carbon dioxide. Like we people, right? Women, we need each other. And so we can't be afraid to reach out.
Yes, yes. More people are willing and available to help us than we think there are. So thank you for that reminder. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to take a second to say thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your insights. And I'm sure people are going to benefit tremendously. We will have all of Anissa's ways to reach her in the show notes. So please make sure to reach out to her if there is anything that, as she said, if she said anything that resonated with you. As always, keep leading with soul, and I will see everybody next time. Thank you, Anissa.